Did you know that the average millennial relationship only lasts up to 4 years? Could it be due to social media, music, the culture, or unrealistic expectations? Let's talk about it. My name is Jamisha Gaillard.
And I'm Kay Scott.
Welcome to the Know. We have Pastor Bill Ellis on today. He is the pastor of APC Morgan Park Church in Chicago, Illinois. We also have Gregory Daniel Esq. So, girl, why are not these relationships lasting? I feel now that relationships are not lasting due to people not wanting to be committed. There's a lot of unrealistic expectations. I think social media has a lot to do with it personally. I think the media has a lot to do with it. I think the music has a lot to do with it. You see a lot of these rappers, you see these shows, and none of them are portraying faithfulness. None of them are portraying commitment. It's all about, get what you can, especially with these female rappers. We were talking about Sweetie and how she says, if he can't buy you a Birkin, if he ain't buying your bills and throwing back to the streets. So now you have all of these young females going by that ideology, sorry, and they don't even have Sweetie's money. They're working at Walmart or at the dollar store.
Right.
So, I mean, what are some things that you see? Because personally, I think a lot of it has to do with social media. The generations prior to this one, they didn't have that. You kind of had to stick it out. They didn't have all of the options that we do now due to all the apps, Instagram. I can literally be in San Antonio and be dating someone in Egypt,
Right.
dating someone in New York, dating someone in Tennessee. So I think that's why relationships aren't lasting. People don't want to be committed. We have too many options. The media tells us why even being in a relationship.
Right. Right.
So.
I totally agree. I think it's a combination of all of those things. There's so many different factors. I think one of the biggest factors, as we talked about before, is just what people see, what their example of a real relationship is,
Right.
and the fact that today in society, they literally glorify the fact that you don't have to stick it out, that you can always go to the next, because people are so accessible. You can go on and hit someone's DMs within a minute. You have a new boo. Right. So why stick it out when you can get someone else? So right. Yeah.
And even like the generations prior to us, because the options weren't as available, you dated someone you went to church with, or you
Right.
worked with, or you met at the grocery store, at the Dollar General, at Walmart, at the gas station. Nowadays, there's just so many options you can have. And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like we don't take dating and relationships as seriously as people did nowadays. You have women who feel like, well, I'm independent. I don't need a man. And no, you necessarily don't have to need a man, but to have that kind of thought process, like, I don't really need you. I can use you for what you can give to me. But
Right.
as far as anything else, like, I'm good on that. And I feel like that's just the mindset of a lot of women nowadays. Like what Steve was saying last night, a lot of women now have the mentality of men back in the 90s,
Right.
savages. It's like, if you can't fly me out, if you can't buy me a bag,
Right. If we can't get flued out.
they're trying to get flued out.
Right.
So it's like, you really can't do nothing for me.
Right. Right.
So
Totally agree.
yeah.
So fellas, what do y'all think? What are y'all thinking over there?
That last statement sounds to me like the one of the difficulties is this is a generation where everybody's hustling.
Yes.
I mean, you got the females out here. I mean, and the females are out here getting that bag more than the dudes are. I mean, they selling earrings, selling makeup, selling hair, selling
Lashes,
body parts, literally, figuratively. I mean, I don't know what I can say on this show. This is I don't know if this is an adult program, but yeah, they're selling. The ladies are selling everything and coming up and hustling. And so fellas, hey, you gotta step their game up.
Right. Yeah, and I think it stems from, I believe, what Keisha said a minute ago. Uh, just people seeing relationships differently. Generationally, if you don't see what you're wanting, it's kind of hard to imagine that. And like Pastor Bill just said, everybody's getting money. Uh, some people have the perception of, if I have it on my own, why do I need you? So if you don't come up in a family where you really see a true definition of marriage, like my grandparents before they both passed were married for 61 years. My parents were married, will have been married this year for 26 years. And so my definition of what marriage looks like is formed from that. Um, if you don't have that, then the only place to kind of turn is what you see. And with social media, that's where a lot of people are getting their definitions of what marriage is supposed to look like or what a relationship is supposed to be, even down to what is the role that this person is supposed to play for me and what am I supposed to be to that person.
Exactly. I think also the media too, because even back in the '90s, we had sitcoms that showcased what love looked like. You had your Overtons and Sinclairs, you had your Martin and Ginas, you had your
Cliff and Claire.
the Huxtables, you had the Banks, and nowadays we have Love and Hip Hop. And so that is our definition, or at least for the younger generation, of what love looked like. Because let's be honest, a lot of people don't come from a loving home. A lot of people don't come from a two-parent home. A lot of us come from single mothers, or if we had a father figure, he really wasn't a good example of a man. Right. So we look towards the media, we look towards TV, and we say, okay, well, I see this woman, she's getting this money, she's dating this guy and that guy and that guy, she's not really being faithful, but she seems happy. I mean, she has the bag, she has the shoes, she has the Brazilian hair. So clearly she's happy, quote unquote. So that's what I aspire to be. That's what love looks like to me, getting money. And I think that's a huge.
The irony of that is people think they're seeing a reality, but it's a false reality.
Exactly.
Because it's so easy for me to take my camera out and record what I'm doing. I can record exactly what I want you to see to make you think exactly what I want you to think.
Exactly.
And so people see that and say, "Oh, she's happy. I'm going to form my entire basis of my life off of 5 seconds of what I think is reality."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then when they get to know the real person, they see it's not something that's sustainable and it doesn't last because I sold you on who I wanted you to think I was. And in reality, that's not who I was at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
I do have a question for Pastor Bill because you have been married for some time. So can you, I guess, kind of explain to us how is dating different, at least from your perspective of what you see? How is it different nowadays versus when you were dating your wife?
I think I feel comfortable saying this. One of the main things that probably is different in dating now is one of the things that Greg just said. I'll touch on that. It's where did you get your concept of dating? Where did you get your idea of how you should date and what dating should look like? I'm a little older than you guys, right? But coming from a traditional background with traditional values with a father and mother, my dad opened doors, for my mom, not all the time, but he did it. He put her coat on, not all the time, but he did it. And he would tell me, this is how you treat a lady. This is what you do for, certain things. So I had somebody, even like what you were saying, Jamisha, regardless of there was a male figure around. And so many people didn't even have that, regardless of what the role model is and what the relationship is, but just having a male figure around. I heard somebody joke about this the other day, and I kind of chuckled until I actually saw it. But I pulled up to the gas station the other day, and this young lady is out pumping her gas. And this is Chicago, and the wind is blowing. It ain't cold yet, but it's a little pre-winter day. You know what I mean? It's a little cool, a little nippy out there. And the wind is blowing, and she's pumping the gas. Well, she was on the driver's side, and the tank was on her side, and so it's probably her car. And Buddy was sitting in the driver's seat, rolling his blunt.
Shame.
Oh, okay. Shame. But so is this what dating has come to now? So that is one thing that I would say is just a major difference now is what are the expectations? Who's setting these expectations? Where are they coming from? And I mean, I won't get into this, but maybe y'all can push the conversation because what are y'all looking for? And where are you getting those expectations from? Jamisha, you're single. Greg, you're single. I mean, right? You can't. You're a lawyer. You're a professional man. A
Yeah.
young professional. So can't no woman run game on you because you're
Uh,
trained in how to decipher through
that
information and pick apart the truth.
I'm detecting sarcasm. I'm detecting sarcasm.
So what? So how can a
It's
female
funny,
come to you? What are you looking for?
man. It's funny because I'm finding myself like at a crossroads of do I do I continue with what I think is the way it's supposed to be, or do I try to conform a little bit? Because like what you just described, the situation you saw, you see a guy sitting in the passenger seat rolling a blunt while she's pumping gas, that's gonna rub me the wrong way. I'm gonna see that and be like, that's weird. But
Right.
then I have experience, being the guy that would say, "Hey, let me pump your gas for me." Like, no, 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 don't. No, I don't need you to do that. Like, I've experienced the negativity of chivalry, like doing the things that I do because I know how to do them because I've watched my father do them for 20 something years, and even to the point where one time I was told you would make a great husband, but you're not a great boyfriend. And I didn't know how to take that at first, but I kind of was like that's what first started cluing me in. Like, okay, people have a different perception of what they want,
Right.
and it's almost to the point where they expect to deal with certain things.
That's
They
big.
expect to put up with certain behaviors, and if they don't get that, it's almost to the point where it's like, okay, something's not right, or this isn't really a relationship. Almost to the point where it's so glorified to have some aspect of drama that if it's not
Yeah,
there,
being having toxic relationships.
that's not, that's boring. That's not what it is. So, like I said, I'm still navigating that. I'm still navigating, there's it's like a shrinking pool of people that are raised like myself and Pastor Bill, that have seen what it looks like, and even to the point where I've redefined what I grew up thinking what unequally yoke used to mean. Like when we were taught that meant don't date somebody that doesn't believe the same way you believe. But now it's okay, that's don't date somebody that doesn't have the same lifestyle as you. Don't date somebody you know that doesn't agree with you on the same principles, even down to what should a man treat, how should a man treat a woman, how should a man open the door for that kind of thing makes a difference. It makes a big difference.
I don't know if you saw my post on social media on Facebook. I posted a just a question asking, would you be okay with splitting the bill on the first date? For me, my expectation is when a man asks a woman on a date, I'm expecting you to pay for the date. And I was very surprised when I saw men saying that they would split the bill on the first date. And then women were saying they would rather pay for their portion so that the man can know that they're independent. So that blew my mind. First of all, I don't have to prove that I'm independent to you. You see, my lights are on, my internet is on, my car is running. That's proof enough that I'm independent. I feel like if a man is trying to pursue or approaches a woman on for a date, he should pay for the date. But the expectations now, I'm so independent. And I said it's funny because I feel like the only time I hear the independent rhetoric is from our women. And I think that's being passed on from our mothers who didn't have the best marriages or the best relationships. And they instilled in us, don't ever depend on a man, depend on yourself, get your education, get you a good job. But we were never taught to really allow a man to pursue us. And I think now we're living with a whole generation of women who really don't know how to allow a man to pursue them. So when you ask for expectation, I am single, for anyone who's watching. Um, my expectation is for a man to pursue me. If you ask me on a date, I'm expecting you to pay for that date. Now, if you know you have $25 in your pocket, Do not take me to Perry's Steakhouse and expect me to pay my half.
Right.
Date me within your budget.
Right.
Chili's got a 2 for $20. So I just feel like, and that's just, to me, I don't know. I think splitting the bill on the first date is unrealistic. If a man takes me out and said, okay, hey, you got your half, that's tacky to me, and I'm not interested at all. I just wouldn't be. And Keisha, you're married.
Yes.
So, I mean, how was it when you were dating your husband?
So my experience was, I guess, a little different only because, so I did come from that same type of family dynamic. My mom, I was raised by a single woman, a strong single woman. She didn't necessarily force me to feel independent, but it's something I took on my own. I was one of those females, because I didn't have my father in the home, versus where you see some females are needy towards men because of that. I was completely opposite. I totally hated men and felt like, oh, I'm gonna hurt you before you hurt me. And I had that mindset of being, I'm independent, I don't need anyone. But when I met my husband, my now husband, he was very that take care of type of man. So it was something I had never experienced. So it reminds me even what Greg was saying. It's almost like I rejected him at first because I was so used to dealing with guys who didn't care or treated me any kind of way, only because I didn't care about them either. So here comes a man who wants to really take care of me. And it took me a long time before I was able to actually sit back. And now looking back at it, I see a big part of that was I didn't know my worth at the time. Wow. So I really didn't even understand that this is what I really deserved. You know, here I am thinking, oh, I'm independent. No, really, you're broken. You're bitter because of whatever you've experienced in your past, and you don't understand who you really are. So as I grew and started understanding my worth and my value, it was easier for me to accept, you know, having someone taking care and looking out for me. So, yeah.
And I think that's the issue with a lot of women. It comes from a broken place. You know, a lot of women have been hurt, cheated on, abused, taken advantage of. Yeah. And so now it's like we have the mentality of, well, I'm going to get you before you get me. Right. And I'm going to look out for me first.
Right. It's a defense mechanism.
Exactly. Yeah. Daniel, with you being single, have you ran into that? Well, you did say that I'm sorry, Greg. I called you by your last name. I'm so sorry.
That's been happening for 30 years. It's okay.
You said that you have ran into that independent-minded woman who, you know, you were offered to be chivalrous towards her, but she rejected it. How did that make you feel? Like, moving forward, do you kind of... I'm sorry.
So there's a few dynamics to that. One, I'll say I completely wholeheartedly agree with you. I'll preface it by saying that I agree. If I'm going to ask somebody out on a date, I'm doing that. I'm going to pay for it. You know, I'm going to plan it, blah, 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 blah. But a couple of things. One, especially people like myself, I'm worried about, you know, there's a new kind of like culture going around this we just going on dates for dinners and we doing this. And so even though I would prefer to pay, I get the some people. I don't simplify it just to a man being cheap when they ask to split the bill. Because I've seen people say that and explain it like, okay, I do that to kind of see if they're serious. Because if they're just doing it just to see what they can get out of it and get it for dinner or get you to take them out, then offering them to pay, even if you offer and say, hey, will you go half, and then don't do it and don't allow them to do it just to see where they're at. So I will say that. To answer your question, as far as how that made me feel, it you know, it made me feel kind of like out of place, because it was like, it's like being, you know, that feeling where like people always say like, well, I feel like I should have been born in this era. I should have been around this time. It was like, okay, I know I'm not doing something wrong, like morally incorrect, like that's weird. But what I believe what one of you were just saying, Keisha, I think you were saying it, is you initially did not know how to accept your husband being that way with you. And I think that's where a lot of women have to get to that, have to do, is at some point you have to go through a reconditioning. And what I mean by reconditioning is like either your disposition is formed based off of your last relationship, um, your history with men, or even the men in your life. So if you're not used to certain things, or if you think certain things insinuate something else, then your receiving of how I am to you is going to be based off of that, not based off of 100% on what it is I'm actually showing you. So then what happens then is that puts it in a position where it's like, okay, before I even get a chance to prove myself, you've already judged me, not based on me, but based on A plus B equals C. He's doing this. This is what usually happens. So this is where it's going to end up. So like you said, I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me, type of thing. And if you don't, if you don't take the time to really step back and look at things and recondition and say, okay, I'm going to wipe the slate clean. I'm going to give this person a chance, or I'm going to really dig in and look at what their intentions are, then it's going to, like you said, it's going to end differently.
That is good. Kind of shut me up. I still am not paying my half though. So I mean, of course you and Pastor Bill are married, but you work with young girls.
Right.
And I'm sure you have young people at your church. So what are some of the unrealistic expectations that y'all see? Just looking at this generation or the younger generation. What are some things that y'all see?
Monogamy.
That's a huge one.
I
Or the
need to
lack
get- I need to
thereof.
get my water on that.
Is that an unrealistic expectation? I heard one of those couples that do the videos and everything on, but yeah, I mean that becomes a real question. Because like Greg said, man, that was heavy. You said that earlier though. You have some people that make, and vice versa. You have some people that'll make great boyfriends and girlfriends, but they won't make great long-term companions, and vice versa. So I guess it depends on, ultimately, like, what are you looking for? But you asked that question. I mean, is that what unrealistic expectations? That's what are they? I mean, what are you expecting from somebody, and do they have the capacity to deliver that to you? Well, then you need to discuss that on that first date when we discuss this bill when it comes. That should be, let's frame that. That should be the first real test of how you communicate, how you see things, what your paradigm is as far as interaction and responsibility, and how we're going to communicate the difference. Let the waiter or waitress just put the check in the middle of the table, and then you two just look at each other. Because this is the conversation that determines, the principle of how we communicate. This is where I'm getting ready to see, what did your mama teach you about what to do where you sit at the table when, they bring the check and you're on the first date.
Right.
And the dude is sitting there like, hey, what was this and how do we pursue this? So yeah, that leads to how do we communicate? Here's the first test of how we communicate. Put the bill in the middle of the table. First date. What are we gonna do? Now, why did you ask me on this date? Because if I pay, then I'm expecting something. This is, a mutual exchange. This is a business transaction. Just like everything is. We're transacting business in any communication that we have, in any relationship that we have. It's about, supply and demand, a fair exchange, and what we're getting out of it.
That's very true. You said something about monogamy, and I think nowadays monogamy kind of is an unrealistic expectation. I did see the video on a couple speaking on monogamy, and from what I heard, the wife told her then boyfriend her expectations, and one of her expectations was marriage, and so he asked her to marry him. But in his mind, it was like she was pressuring him to marry her simply because she said that was her expectations.
She
And I think
was.
nowadays, I'm sorry.
I said she was. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you
How
off, but
was
she
I
was.
pressuring her?
I was gonna open up a can
Come
of
on,
worms.
Pastor Bill. If a woman is stating her expectations, it is up to that man to either say that is not for me or go along with her expectations. He didn't have to marry her.
Right.
He
She didn't put a
chose
gun
to
to
I
his
marry
head.
agree
her.
though. I agree with him. It is pressuring him, but let me say this though. That should not have came that late in the game. So let me step back. So for me, before I even go on a date with somebody, like on a real date with somebody, like I'm taking you on a date because I'm interested in you date, I've already gone through a checklist in my head. I've already gone through like, okay, if I don't actually see myself being with this person, why am I going to waste the time? I'm definitely going to ask you before we go out, do you want kids in the future? Do you want to be married? If either one of those questions is no, once again, why am I wasting your time? Now, the thing about that is if you do that early on and you don't agree, everybody's cool. Nobody can be mad at each other because if I ask you, do you want to marry? Do you want kids? Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Great. If we were both honest up front and said that, cool, we're good. If we wait 2 years in and then start having that talk and I figure out like, hey, I'm not really ready, and she's ready, she is going to say, you either got to marry me or not. And yes, that's pressuring him. But the reason why it got to that point was because they did not have that discussion early on.
That's very
So
true.
it's pressuring because they're at two different places. She detects that, he detects that. So she's speaking up because at that point she's like, okay, I'm not trying to wait around, waste time. I know what I want. He probably does absolutely knows what he wants, and it's not marriage. So she speaks up, like I said. But at that point, everybody's mad because nobody took the time to be honest very early on about what their expectations and what their intentions were.
True.
But I still don't see it as pressure.
Is that
I see
is
it as
that
a choice that he made.
is there a legal term for that, lawyer? Is that coercion?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's pressuring because I hate the word pressuring because it sounds so negative.
Yes.
But let's see if we can find a different term for it. Instead of pressuring, uh, it's your it's closer to an ultimatum to me because
Okay.
and you're not saying straight out. Well, in some cases, some people do, but in most cases, they're not going to say straight out. Either you marry me, or I'm going to walk away. Sometimes it gets to that point, but that's step one of what they're saying. Like, are you going to marry me? Like, I want marriage, but I don't think And again, it's a perception thing. When people tell these stories, they're not telling it from the beginning. They're not saying we talked in the beginning and you said, we hinted at marriage, or maybe we did have a very clear discussion and kind of talked about a timetable. And, 2 years in, and people drop hints along the way, here and there. So all we hear is, oh, well, I told him, that I wanted to be married. The perception is she's pressuring him because he's not going to tell you, oh, she's been saying this for 2 years. She we walking through the mall and she glancing over at Zell's diamonds and pointing and making sure I know her ring size. She's been talking about like, yeah, I can't wait, when we get married and we get to have kids and then do this and Christmas at our, like, she's been saying stuff along the way. People most of the time are not going to be honest. So yeah, it's kind of an ultimatum again. But I like I said, there's always got to be a backstory to pressuring somebody because nobody's going to go from 0 to 100 the next day, like 2 days in. All right, you better marry me, or no, that's not realistic.
anytime a woman brings up marriage and a man doesn't, that's pressure.
I can see it that way. I understand that way. But okay, I have a question for you. How long is a woman supposed to wait until the man brings up marriage? What if they've been together 1 to 2 years and he hasn't said anything? Does she sit there and wait, or she says, "Hey,
How
you
long
know,
did
we
how long
married."
how long did it take, Miss K, Scott? How long did it take to come up, and who brought it up with you? Did you bring it up, or did your husband bring it up?
I don't think I brought it up. I don't know. But for me, I know it wasn't a thing that I was looking for. So I think it just casually just happened. We had similar goals, similar dreams, and it just happened. But it wasn't something I didn't feel like, oh, we've been dating for 2 years. I need a ring.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that way. But I will say, I do, just from being married, men interpret things very different.
Mm-hmm.
So while we might think, oh, we're just mentioning it, they take it as pressure because men are naturally wired to fix problems or to take action on whatever they hear. So they feel like, okay, now I got to marry her because she brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're not necessarily trying to
There's
pressure
another
you.
thing I got to do.
Right. We're not trying to pressure you,
Yeah.
but that's how y'all take it.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know?
gonna make it hard on us. Keisha, when's the last time you had to remind your husband about the Super Bowl coming up?
Whew, never,
Ever.
ever.
Right. When's the last time you had to remind him to eat his favorite food or stop at his favorite fast food restaurant?
Not a day.
And for me, it's that simple. If the reason why it feels like pressure when somebody brings something up is because either they're not thinking about it or they're purposely avoiding it.
That's
Well,
good.
If I'm,
you better
if
preach.
it's if that's, again, if you're approaching a relationship the right way, you're constantly working towards that. So it's not like you have to bring it up to me. I'm going to bring it up. In past relationships, we would talk extensively about when it would possibly happen. I didn't give a specific date, but we would talk about it because it was important to know. Because again, part of going back to the whole equally yoked thing is making sure your lives are going in the same direction.
Right.
Because I could even as simple as, even as something that, like, I could want to be married in the next 2 years and start having kids right away. If I meet somebody that's a little younger than me or much younger than me, I'm 30. If I meet somebody that's 23, 24, they may not be ready yet. We may both want marriage, but maybe not in the same timetable. For me, I'm like, okay, I'm 30, pushing 31. My mom was looking crazy at me, like, okay, what you doing? Like, so it's it's that part of it, that having that, but you don't have to bring that up. If I'm in a relationship with you, if I'm in a committed relationship with you, you shouldn't have to bring it up. And again, if a man is saying, well, I feel pressured, that's code for I ain't really seeing this going that way, or I'm enjoying where I'm at right now.
Yeah, let's not mess this up.
Some more
Let's not go
code
harsh
for
truth.
I'm enjoying something else. Because it's again, it's not, it's as simple as having to remind somebody about something that really means a lot to them. The Super Bowl means a lot to every football fan. You don't have to tell them, hey, the Super Bowl is coming on this Sunday, because we already know when it's coming. By December, we're glued to the TV waiting to see who's getting ready to play in the Super Bowl. So you're not having to remind us. So that's analogous to, I'm in a relationship with you. I feel the natural progression of it. I know where I am. I'm working towards being in a place where I'm able to, take my life there, financially, spiritually, mentally. Nobody's having to tell me, you thinking about marriage, because it's in the forefront of my mind already, to the point where I feel pressure.
Mm.
It's not, it's way simpler than that to me.
You better learn us something today.
Let me say this on let me kind of come on the lady side for a second. And that is to say that um, every man knows any female he's entertaining at any level, when it gets serious, she's gonna want to be made an honest woman, whatever that means, or we can have another conversation. I have to come back and we can talk about what Greg, we'll have to talk about marriage is it just a legal definition or the spiritual union, or is it just a legally binding agreement between two people who are deciding that they want to exercise their rights together? I mean, we can get into that later on.
Right.
But we start
Absolutely.
with, hey, this thing is getting serious. She's going to want to do something, go somewhere, even if it progresses to, let's just use a loose analogy. Let's say it's just a convenient, a recreational interaction that progresses out of need, maybe to a cohabitation situation. And out of that, a real relationship does develop some seriousness. And now it's, okay, well, we've been living together, for the last 4 years. Like, what are we going to make this legal? Or are we going to go stand in front of a preacher and make this honorable? Or are we just going to say, hey, you know what? If it ain't broke, don't break it. So there are different dynamics for different people groups. And I mean, again, what is the intention when y'all exchange information? What's the intention?
Right. And
that's what the young people need to think about.
Right, absolutely. And I'm gonna jump all the way back to the man side for a second. I made the mistake of assuming that, women are always ready to be married. Like, they're absolutely, like, we're the ones got to be convinced, pulled up. And one of the things, like I was talking about earlier, reconditioning. I dated somebody that had been previously married when they were really young. Dated other people in between us dating, and then we got together. We, in the beginning, we talked about all that stuff and said we want the same thing, said we want this, and I really believe one of the things that went wrong in that relationship was that person being used to men telling her something and not coming through, or also being used to relationships, like you said, it becomes internalized. At some point, that something's coming up, that something's gonna derail it. So, look, I'm gonna say this, y'all ain't gonna like it. Women nowadays talk as good as a game as men do,
if not better.
And so we're both in the beginning talking about, like, hey, yeah, I want to get married. Oh yeah, me too, for sure.
Right.
And I say, hey, okay, as soon as I finish school, as soon as I pass the bar exam, all right, you're on the clock. Like, the clock starts, 24-second clock starts, it's countdown, you can expect it. And you thinking, oh, he ain't gonna make it there, or we ain't gonna make it there. And lo and behold, we get there, and you're like, nah, I'm not sure if I want. So again, it's really, it's taught me that I can't take that for granted.
Right.
Like, there's as much sussing that out as, making sure I have to make sure I want it as much as the other person does, and vice versa.
That's good.
That is very good. I mean, just going back to the expectations. I mean, because we're all in different stages of our life. For me, in a relationship, 'cause we talked about the unrealistic, but some may think that my expectations in a date or in a relationship or dating stage or whatever you want to call it is unrealistic, because I expect a man to pursue me.
Right.
And that may look different to different people. I expect loyalty. I expect monogamy. And that just seems like nowadays that's so unrealistic, to ask a man to only be exclusive with you and to only be loyal to you. Because I don't know where this situationship stuff I don't know when or where it started, but it seemed like that's what our generation is dealing with. So I like you, but I like her over here. So I'm going to give you like Monday through Wednesday. And there's even songs about it.
Yeah.
I got him Monday through whatever day. You can have him this whatever day. So that becomes the expectation of a relationship. And I think also nowadays we don't really even know what what that even means.
Right.
What actual dating means. So what are some of the expectations that y'all look for in a spouse or look for in a mate or, just in the dating stage in general? I'm looking at you.
I'm
Keep
like,
you
I'm
looking-
no longer dating, so I don't know if I can.
Even in your relationship, what are the expectations that you have for your relationship?
So monogamy is definitely it. I don't care if you felt pressured or not. You're in it now, so that's what we're gonna do. Also, definitely respect.
Yes.
Support. Allowing me to be me, and also giving me my space to do the things that I desire to do, and also the things that I need to do as a wife, but not keeping me in a bubble. I hate being in bubbles. I don't fit inside boxes, so just allowing me to do that, and honesty, definitely honesty, and just fun. Like just enjoying life.
And those are so not unrealistic.
Real simple.
What about you guys?
I'll offer this. We use this acronym here as a concept that the Spirit gave me, and I'm grateful for that. But it's clear. CCLR. The 4 components or 4 pillars for relationships, especially, of course, working relationships: commitment, cooperation, love, and respect. Those 4 things across the board. If you're committed, even there's even Bible for this, and it's not super preachy, but we've always heard it. Let's just look at it in a very sort of broader context. But Jesus says, basically the key to happiness in life is to love God with your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, in there, we see a precedent set for what the expression of love should look like. Well, it should look like you being committed to being the best you that you can be so that you can be even better for me. It means cooperation, right? Cooperating with all circumstances and situations that involve our interaction. There's love, of course. There's the love. There's the vertical love that we have for God. And then that love extends horizontally as represented in the cross. So now we can love each other like Christ loves us. And then respect. I mean, take it how you want to take it. If you respect yourself, if you love yourself, then you'll love me. Wow. And maybe that's what we can start doing. I didn't mean to make that left there.
Right.
This is what
Absolutely.
I do. Maybe that's what we should probably start doing, is reconditioning ourselves and reprogramming ourselves, and actually start loving ourselves first properly. And I'm sure Kay Scott teaches her young ladies that, because you can't really love somebody else until you love yourself. Because if you're willing to hurt yourself and kill yourself slowly but surely daily, sacrificing to give yourself the things that you think you need, only to find out later on that they're killing you, but you're not willing to let them go. Well, then I don't really love myself. So now I bring all the stuff that's killing me into this relationship with you, and then hurt people, and I didn't realize I was hurt until you triggered me. That's a new word that the young people are using, right? You triggered me, and I realized that my daddy talked to my mama like this, and my mama left and went to the other guy's house, and I was, sitting in the car, and I didn't know that. But now that I'm grown and I'm triggered, and I go to this guy's house and I sit in the car, and I'm going through these.
Right.
So it's like all of this stuff going on, but it comes back to, are you clear? Are you clear about yourself? Are you clear about what you want? Are you clear about your intentions? Why do you want to get married? Why do you want to date? Are you looking for a come up? Are you really looking for a long-term companion, somebody that will help you be the best you that you can be for the rest of your days?
Right. Yeah, that's right on the head. And like, for me, that's one thing I had to start looking at, like what Bill was saying, is, do you know yourself? I'm started to suss out identity, because if somebody's still trying to figure out who they are, and figure out what they want, I can't trust them even when I ask them those most basic questions. Because, and it's not so much trust like you're lying to me. I can't trust that you may not want something different in a couple of years because you haven't figured it out yet completely. So
Uh,
you may, to give somebody credit, they may say at age 25, yeah, I definitely want to be married. And then 2 years later, they figure out, I really enjoy my freedom. I don't think I want to really be married. I can't be mad at that. But what I have to do is be able to suss out, is that person secure in their identity? Do they know what they want? So that when I ask them, what do you want, what is this? What does your future look like? They're able to give a clear answer, because that's again, that's what will derail relationships if you think you're heading down the same road, but you're not.
uh,
um, and like you said, loving yourself, the a big component of that is knowing yourself. And especially, and it's easy to see sometimes online, because nowadays I've gotten to the point where I can look at somebody and look at, and it's bad, but judge them by what they post. But it's obvious, the difference is obvious, in what you post, how you portray yourself. That screams whether or not you have an identity, or whether or not you're secure in your identity, or where you place your identity.
uh,
If all we see is, pictures of you, in half clothing, blah 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 blah, whatever you're wearing, that to me, that portrays, okay, your identity is in what you look like. So I pick up on those cues early on, and I hate to do that, and I feel like I'm, prejudging somebody, but 99.9% of the time, perception is everything.
Right.
And so that identity component has gotten bigger to me, as I've gotten older. It's being able to see if somebody has a clear identity of themselves.
Right. I love that you guys mentioned, knowing yourself and, loving yourself because, a lot of us are single. I'm newly single. And even though I do have my moments where I do get lonely and you kind of want to backtrack to old relationships, but just during this time of my singleness, I'm really taking time to really get to know myself and to love myself. I feel like prior, I kind of placed my value in who loved me versus me just learning how to love myself and accept myself for who I am. So during this time of my singleness, that's just like my main focus. Focusing on my mental health, my spiritual health, my physical health, and really getting to know myself. Cuz I don't think a lot of us, we really don't know ourselves. We don't even know what we want. So we expect our partner to know what we want. Right, to figure it out. How can they do that if we don't even know ourselves? So,
Or what ends up happening when you do the fear, the downside of not knowing yourself before getting married is when you get married, then you're not able to fully be who you're supposed to be for your partner because
right,
you're so lost in trying to figure yourself out. When
right,
if you would have known that, you could have been solid in that and has been assisting your partner on, along the way versus trying to figure it out, and just becomes a lot of confusion. So
yes.
it's so important that you know yourself, you know who you are, whose you are,
Hmm.
because then and only then can you be who you're supposed to be, and assist your mate in becoming who they're supposed to be as well.
Right. What are some other things? I mean, because I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I was going to say another part of that too, is another component of knowing yourself is knowing who would work for you.
Right.
Because one thing I learned is I just can't be with somebody that, no slight against anybody that doesn't really want to work full time or anything like that. But I have to be with somebody that is as ambitious or close to being as ambitious as me, because they won't understand me if they're not. And they won't, and as busy as I am, that's not a good combination either. Like if I'm super busy and they're super bored, that is a bad combination. So little stuff like that, and it's knowing you. If you know yourself, then I can very quickly detect qualities or preferences in somebody else that I'm like, oh, that's not going to be good for me. And again, for me, it's about not wasting people's time. I'm not going to, if I don't know myself well enough to know what works, it's going to be 6 months down the line, and there's going to be two upset people and a big argument that could have been avoided by me just taking time to get to know myself.
Right. Very true. I can attest. Very true. Pastor Bill, what are some things that you can, suggest that singles do in the midst of waiting?
Ooh, I'm gonna give a very textbook, quote unquote church answer.
Okay.
And that's keep yourselves, young people. Keep yourselves. All right. But I say that though really by experience. I say that by personal experience. I'll be very, candid and transparent. Here's what you can end up dealing with in a long-term situation. I've been married 17 years, and not to say that this has happened to and with in my relationship, but all of the relationships that I've had to entertain in conversation. But that is very clearly the person you are when you start dating is not the person you are when you get married. And then the people that you are when you get married are not the people that you remain married to. So you keep evolving. Well, let's just use this loosely, but at 25 years old or at 30 years old, you all were the apple of each other's eye, and the just the sexiest thing in the world, and that was it. You didn't have eyes for anybody else. Well, after I've been looking at you for 15 years and you don't look the same, or you do look the same, or it's just you. I mean, that's what it is. And there also is the reality of, and this is why I said it's directly about keeping yourself, because you bring all this sexual baggage into any relationship. And that sexual baggage also leads to, because it's connected with psychological baggage. Then there's also the spiritual baggage. We won't get into that, but that whole connection of that you have spent time with, invested in, and been stimulated by and turned on by somebody else. And it may have been that person for a long period of time. And now you're married with this new person, and they're everything that you want, but they don't know how to hit that switch. And they just don't know how to hit it. And you're used to having that switch hit. And you don't know how to tell them to hit it, because that was, and then wait a minute, hold on, and just again loosely using it, but well, that switch ain't been hit in 10 years, but now you realize, well, I need this switch hit. Do I still have this switch? Where is it? I don't know.
Can you find it for me?
And same thing, for men, especially for men. Now let me get on the men's side, especially for men. Because I'm kind of from the old school. Greg, you may have heard this, but it's you want to, what is it? You want a wife a wife in the streets and a freak in the sheets.
Lady in the streets, freak.
Yeah,
right.
A lady in the sheets, a lady in the streets, and a freak in the sheets. That's what you want. Right. Well, brother, I mean, you with your ebony prowess, you done, agitated all these freaks. And now you got one that is, maybe she's not that kind of freak, or maybe she's more, and now you nervous. Wait a minute. How'd you know you had a switch? I was supposed to show you where the switch was. You thought, no, Doc, the switch over here, Jack.
Right. Where you learn that from?
So, but seriously, to say that we bring all of this and then we don't know when this stuff will come up. And that's kind of where I'm going with it. We don't know when it will come up. We don't know when it will come up, reveal itself, revere itself. You know, it can be one bad argument, one night, 1 week moment. And you leave the house, you pick up your phone and you make that call. And you jeopardize everything that you've been trying to build, you know, because of that one moment. So I'm saying to that, just it sounds cliche, but I mean, young people, if I could say that, develop every part of the relationship that you can before you have sex. I ain't gonna tell you don't do it. I'm not qualified to talk about celibacy, so I don't. However, I will tell you, abstain as long as you can and build something up, you know, of substance first. So that when there is no physical activity, then you still have some, you know, I at least don't mind sitting on the phone actually talking to you. You really have something to say.
Right. Another point, at least for me, I believe in becoming the person that you want to be with. Like I pose this question to myself often. If I was trying to pursue me, would I want to be with me? And I said, depending on the day. There's some days where I think I'm a great catch. And then there are some days where I'm like, you got a lot of work to do.
Right.
So I just believe in just in this time of waiting and being single, just try to become the person that you want. If you want love, become love. If you want peace, become peace. If you want someone who is loyal, then be loyal. Be compassionate, you know, empathetic, hardworking. Because I don't know what's going on with these generation of men. They don't want to work. But that's another topic for another time.
Well.
So, yes, Keisha.
Yeah. And I would
Yeah,
say,
and I think part of that is what Pastor Bill said earlier about you know, again, with knowing yourself, but he mentioned triggers, you know, that's huge, knowing what your triggers are.
Yes.
You know, getting to know, understand, and learn what makes you angry, like what triggers you, what hurts you, as if somebody took a baseball bat and bruised your rib yesterday, and it is still hurting. And if I poke you right there, it's going to get you every single time. Like, you know, that's big, because like he said earlier, I'm looking, hindsight's always 2020, and I had that realization the other day. I was like, man, one of my triggers is I don't like being picked over, or somebody else picking somebody else over me, or being that forgotten or consolation prize, should I say. I don't like that, you know. And I look back on a situation and stuff that happened, I'm like, oh, that's what's similar with that. Okay, I see that you see the pattern in, you know, how you react to certain things, and that's where, okay, now once you see, okay, that's my trigger, I gotta fix that, or I gotta deal with that. Because everybody, you know, when a relationship ends, everybody wants to act like, okay, yeah, it was all them, I didn't do nothing wrong.
Right.
You know, and that's where we don't learn from that situation, correct ourselves, like you said, in the single time, figuring out, you know, how you can be the person you want to be pursued, or that you would want to pursue, and deal with that stuff.
yeah. I was just going to say, my piece of advice would be, it sounds cliche, but just don't settle.
Right.
If you know there are things that you desire in a mate, like Jamisha, you said that you have certain things, Greg, you have certain things. Just because you haven't found someone that represents that doesn't mean you have to settle for anything. Because, and it doesn't even matter if you're in a situation and you feel like, oh, I've been with this person for so much, you know, I don't want to let them go, even though you know they're not going to get you where you need to go, or they're not the one for you.
Right.
Don't settle for it out of fear that you're not going to find that one.
Right.
And I love to use Sierra as an example. Yeah. The moment she left something she was settling for, she found her Prince Charming, or her Prince Charming found her. Now, not saying Russell Wilson's, we know those are like, you know, they ain't out there like that, but you just never know what's out there waiting. But they can't find you if someone else is taking up that space. So never settle, and just trust whatever energy you put out is going to come back to you when it's meant to come to you. So just do not settle. Even if you have a past, like for me, looking at, if people that know me, you would not think that I deserve, quote unquote, the husband that I have, but God saw otherwise, you know? So you just never know. What's for you is for you.
So I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, Gregory. Thank you, Pastor Bill, for giving your perspective. Trust me, I took away a lot of nuggets, and I learned me some things on today.
Right.
So thank you so much for just coming and chatting with us. Keisha, any last words, sis?
Thank you. Great conversation. Definitely. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Thank you so much, ladies, for having me. I was honored to be here and to share a little information, and so glad to be able to sit with the Honorable Esquire, Gregory Daniel.
Oh man.
And Keisha, we go way back. And Jamisha, it was great to meet you. So look forward
Yes,
to
sir, you
hopefully I
too.
get to come back again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We hope that this conversation added some kind of value to your life.
And remember to follow us on YouTube at The No Podcast. Also, stay tuned every week for a new episode.